It's recently come out that Chinese intelligence agents have successfully breached US government email systems. The Chinese were able to hack into Microsoft Cloud email accounts belonging to people from 24 different agencies, including the State Department. Now, the group responsible for this attack is being called Storm 0558. And the reason for this weird name is because the reports about this breach are coming from Microsoft sources. And a couple of months ago, Microsoft came up with a new naming scheme for labeling these various threat actors. So if we take a look at their most recent blog post, we can see all of these different names are based on storms or weather patterns to describe different nation states and just different kinds of hackers. So blizzard means they're Russian, sandstorm means they're Iranian, sleet means they're North Korean, and I guess it's a tsunami if it's the private sector that's doing a hack. In this case, they're just called Storm, which means it's a new group that's still in development. Now, despite these threat actors having breached into these government email systems and they were able to snoop around undetected for almost a month, nothing has come out yet saying that the hackers were able to access any really sensitive information. At least, according to the Wall Street Journal, no national security information was accessed, but some information was definitely exfiltrated from these various government and private sector email accounts. And we're likely going to see in the coming months or years just how sensitive that information that was stolen really was. Because a month is a long time to be snooping around in these really busy enterprise systems. Now, the way that Storm 0558 was able to hack into Microsoft Exchange Online and Outlook.com was by forging authentication tokens for the accounts. According to the details from Microsoft's write-ups, the hackers exploited a token validation issue, which let them impersonate users in Azure Active Directory in order to gain access to that enterprise mail. So this gives us another interesting opportunity to compare the centralized proprietary security model to the open source self-hosted security model. And honestly, with modern enterprises, it's incredibly rare to see them basically rolling their own email solutions anymore, at least. Every company that I've ever worked for either used Microsoft Exchange or Google for their company email and really for their whole office suites. And it's understandable why people would want to use these big name, just work solutions because email is so critical to your business. There's a lot that can go wrong with it, and not too many people are very good at fixing those issues in a timely manner, or even just setting up a custom email system in the first place. Plus, when there is a breach like this, you can get some support from Google or Microsoft, at least if you're a high-profile company or you're the government. But you're also at the mercy of these companies to create secure software for you, which with Microsoft is kind of like being the child of a drug-addicted parent, okay? You are not going to get your juice box refilled anytime soon. For example, there's a vulnerability in Microsoft Teams right now that was discovered by JumpSec Labs that lets people bypass the restrictions on incoming files from users that are outside of an organization. So this means that if a company is using Teams with its default configuration, then anybody can send a file to an employee of that company on Teams and have it appear as if it's coming from inside of the organization. Now, when this flaw was first discovered, Microsoft's response was that the problem did not need to be fixed. It did not meet the bar for immediate servicing because the attack also relied on social engineering. Now, sure, just sending a file to someone on Teams and making it appear like it came from inside of the company doesn't automatically execute that file or execute that malware on somebody else's computer. But I mean, come on. This is a really dangerous flaw for a program to have, for especially one of the most popular collaboration programs that have come out over the last few years to have. Especially now that the US Navy's Red Team just published Teams Fisher. So this is a Python script that basically automates this Microsoft Teams phishing process so that any script kiddie with access to a Kali Linux box is able to do it. And so this is going to become a much more common attack vector for, certainly script kiddies, right? Definitely the less skilled hackers to use. But generally, the way that enterprise security works is the outside layer, outside of the company getting into their network is usually the most difficult thing to bypass. So if you're able to just get a malicious file into an organization through Teams, that's the hardest part, okay? 90% of your work is done, once you're in. Pivoting to other devices and gaining root access is usually going to be a piece of cake. So this might even let the script kiddies, right? The less skilled hackers that are more bold, generally those are the people that are going to actually go out of their way to hack a lot of these different companies. They might be able to get out and actually do a lot of damage. So yeah, this is what you get with proprietary solutions that are designed by companies like Microsoft. They get lazy and they refuse to patch the bugs in their software. At least with open source software, a company that's motivated with enough skilled developers could fork the program and they could harden it. Even though the DIY approach to email is a lot more work to maintain, it usually isn't as straightforward to hack because, like we saw with this most recent breach, all of these organizations were using the same software for their email, and so they all were vulnerable. If you set up your own email system, there might be different software in different companies' stacks, and so compromising them ends up being more of a case-by-case thing. And because these solutions are so rare to see, the DIY email solutions, not as many hackers even take the time to try and exploit them. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend the DIY email approach for enterprises, but many people have had success with self-hosting email, both for personal and for small business use. And if you want to have better control over your data and not be at Microsoft's mercy, then self-hosted email is something you should look into. And another thing that you should look into is not using tax prep services that send your private information to Meta. H&R Block, TaxAct, and TaxSlayer all utilized MetaPixel on their web pages, which is a snippet of JavaScript code that allows you to track visitor activity on your website. We can see here on developers.facebook.com that the MetaPixel can collect HTTP headers, it can collect data about any buttons that you click on a website, it can collect form field names, and much more through custom data events. And of course, since this is Facebook's service, all of the data that is collected about you is also going to be known by the Zuck. It's no wonder he's so good at saving money on his tax returns. He's been seeing everyone else's best tricks for years now. Trackers on websites can be pretty spooky, which is why you should always reject them and reject services that use them. On the extreme end, you'll see some people just block all JavaScript altogether. Since so many of these trackers are implemented in JavaScript, you can do much more detailed fingerprinting of a device when they start executing your JavaScript code in their browsers. This is one of the main reasons why the safest setting in the Tor browser completely disables JavaScript. And if you ever wanted to see the kind of fingerprints that your device leaves behind whenever you visit a website, you can see that on deviceinfo.me, and also you can test different fingerprinting mitigation techniques like installing add-ons or just changing settings in your browser by refreshing the page after you change the setting. So the lesson that we've learned today is that the security of your data depends on you. This is most obvious when you go the open source and self-hosted approach because obviously you're setting up everything on your own, But even if you put your trust in these multi-trillion-dollar companies like Microsoft, that trust can be broken by software vulnerabilities that they won't fix, bug reports that they ignore, and multi-billion dollar tax prep companies like H&R Block might just go ahead and sell your data so that they can make a little bit more money on the side. They might go ahead and run some suspicious JavaScript code on their website so that they can automatically send your information to Meta. Protecting your data is simply not as important to these companies as protecting their profits.